Hi, everybody. This is Tony Bria from MetricStream, and thank you for joining us for Shelby Stinson's Risk Analytics Driving Performance Demonstration. Shelby is a Senior Risk Officer at Hancock Whitney Bank and has been using Tableau and MetricStream for many years. The data analytics that she derives from the solution has greatly helped all the management areas of Hancock Whitney Bank, as well as her team at Hancock Whitney. Today, she will be presenting more along those lines in terms of how it's helped the firm and what it's doing today to drive risk decisions. Also, what she'll do at the end of the presentation is give a wrap up and an overview of what she talked about today. And we encourage everybody to send questions after this performance, and we will be gladly to answer them. So without further ado, I turn it over to Shelby Stinson.
Thanks, Tony. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending my session on risk analytics driving performance. I'm really excited to dive into how we here at Hancock Whitney have been able to leverage Cloud BI analytics to really empower our risk managers in the 3 lines of defense. I'm going to be answering questions like, how can I integrate the data that I'm collecting across all my solution areas into a single dashboard that visually and effectively communicates our risk exposure? And how do I do that in an effective fashion, in an automated fashion so that it cuts back on the time we spend cutting reports? So a little bit of background before myself and the company before we get started. Hancock Whitney is a $30 billion bank holding company located in the Gulf State area, and we're headquartered in Gulfport, Mississippi. I'm a risk officer in the Enterprise Risk Management Department, and I report directly to the Director of ERM and ORM. I've been with the company since 2012, which was around the time that we began our GRC journey with MetricStream. And during my time at the bank, I've been the administrator of the platform, and I've also led several implementations and rollouts within our 3 lines of defense, which includes the implementation of Tableau and the report build behind that project. And for context, we are on the latest version of M7. So let's look at our agenda. First, I want to discuss our GRC program because I think it's important to understand how we got where we are. And I want to share some implementation tips and best practices that we have learned along the way. But I want to spend the majority of the time kind of showcasing some of the reports that we've been able to build using Tableau so you can really gauge some of the power of the analytics behind the tool. Next, I'm going to talk about our organization overview and needs. Okay, so how did our GRC program get started? Well, I think we have a story that's very similar to most MetricStream customers. We had risk groups with unique frameworks and processes working in silos. We were not coordinating efforts or sharing information, so our risk committees received dispersed reporting, and all of our business units really had risk management fatigue because they were constantly being hit with some kind of request from a different risk function, which were most of the time duplicative. So our goal was to develop a common language, classifications, and standards that would be used across our 3 lines of defense, and to leverage information from one another so our risk groups would be recognized as efficient and as partners to the first line. The goal to achieve that mission led to the emergence of our GRC program. So ERM owns and administers the MetricStream platform. We set the deployment strategy and we lead all of the implementation activities within our team of 3 associates. Our ERM team established Rogue, which is our risk oversight and alignment group, which is comprised of the senior leaders of all of the risk functions within the company. And their mission is really to co-develop our GRC framework, which are those core standards and hierarchies that are built into our GRC libraries as the core foundation of the platform. Of course, this approach did not come without its challenges. We struggled in the beginning with resource constraints, not only within our own ERM team, but in the teams that we were trying to onboard. It took us a while to settle on the right altitude of the framework because different groups require different levels of granularity. For example, in ERM, we look at risk across the company at a very high level, whereas internal audit might drill deep down into a specific department and process for their assessments. So we needed a framework and a risk hierarchy that could accommodate both of those things. And then, of course, the challenge of just learning the learning curves of learning a new system in general. You have to take that into account. But GRC is a journey, and I'm going to share in a little bit some of the strategies that we use to deal with those challenges. So for context, here are the solutions that we have deployed. Our implementation began with the issue management. That was kind of that common element between all of our risk groups that all of our risk groups wanted to automate. And so the buy-in was there, and it was really just like a quick win for us to get off the ground running. And then the other solution areas that we have deployed are listed below. And some of our objectives for this year include upgrading to the February 2020 release of M7 that was just made available. Our strategy going forward is going to be at the beginning of each year to upgrade to whatever the most recent version is to ensure that we have the most up-to-date features to support the rollouts of the solution. And secondly, we want to implement a single sign-on tool, and that is really to support this last bullet here, which is further deployment into the first and second lines of defense. We have several groups within our organization that are conducting some sort of risk assessment that are not using the tool today, so we want to get them on board. And also within our first line, we really want to build out a more robust self-identified issue management process. So that's kind of what is on the calendar for us later this year. Some of our implementation rollout strategies and tactics, I'm just going to highlight a few here. I'd say most importantly is spend time on the front end to define clear business objectives. It's important to have a good picture of what you want to get out of the tool before you can begin developing your framework and putting data into the tool. Secondly, I'd say the most important thing that we did was appoint a resident subject matter expert who gained an advanced level of expertise of the tool. And this is the person who will lead your implementation activities and build your reports. And lastly, this is the opportunity to update your program. So when you're implementing this tool, metric stream specifically, not Tableau, but the application itself, I would say do not customize the tool to support your existing processes. Take it as an opportunity to update your program. Continuing on with that theme, I just want to highlight here that it's important to develop reliable processes that produce good data. And you'll see in a moment when we get into Tableau how important it is to have good data if you want to be able to build reports that management is able to use as a tool within the 3 lines of defense. Now let's talk risk analytics with Tableau. For those of you who may not be familiar with Tableau, Tableau is a BI reporting tool that helps to create visualizations to better understand and draw insights from your data. Metric Stream is a partner of Tableau, so all of the licenses and support goes through your same Metric Stream support team. So we're not having to coordinate with a separate team from Tableau. We have one authoring user who creates reports, and then that authoring user publishes the reports to the Tableau server URL, where we provide credentials to other users within our organization to view those reports in an interactive fashion. So they can see what we've published out there, and then they can click on any part of those charts and graphs to drill down further and get some of the detail around what's driving any trends that they're seeing. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Some information around our implementation strategy, just what it looked like for us. The scope of modules that we pulled into Tableau included our GRC libraries, risk management, issue management, loss events, and metrics. So we had a lead analyst who developed and communicated all the requirements to the implementation team around what we needed those metric stream data sources to look like in terms of which fields we wanted to pull in. And that same analyst attended training and led UAT. So it was really just one person leading this activity. The training approach was a 2-day in-person training session that was hosted by Tableau itself. So it consisted of the fundamentals course, which I took pre-UAT. And then after UAT, I took that intermediate course to get me a little bit more advanced knowledge. So with this approach, I knew enough to do UAT with the fundamentals course. But then I got that advanced training after UAT so that I really had the skill set that I needed to build some of the reports. And I would say overall, I had never had, I was not familiar with any other BI tools. Like I had not used them in the past, and I was able to pick it up very quickly. So it's it's pretty easy to learn. So our UAT took approximately 1 month for us to complete, start to finish. And then I think we were live with our reports about 3 months after that. So that was like the turnaround time to get the reports published and in production. So let's talk about what our reporting looked pre-Tableau. What it looked like pre-Tableau. So we were just using the metric stream application, which has the great, raw data reports. So we were just pulling those, doing some analytics on our own, and then publishing those to our SharePoint site. So that was like an issue list report, the risk register, our internal loss event report, metric data entry report. So we just had a report by solution area basically, and then if you wanted to do any kind of summary reporting, you had to create that yourself. Some of the challenges with that was I was spending hours refreshing and analyzing these reports, and they were at a point in time. So they were at the time that I pulled those reports out of metric stream, which was usually at month end. So by the time I was able to aggregate everything together, produce some kind of results, the data was pretty much out of date. And it's difficult when you're using raw data to pull insights. You really need to have some visualizations to help managers draw quick insights from the data, and so that they're able to make decisions. So our strategy with Tableau, what we wanted to move to was to partner with the 3 lines of defense to have a single tool for us all to view, analyze, and communicate risk information and in real time. We wanted to combine all of the data from across the multiple solutions, and we wanted it to be interactive. And our strategy was to drive adoption of these reports through our first line of defense and through our risk subject matter experts. And then we wanted to hopefully have management believe in these reports enough to want to include them in their periodic reviews with our executive or upper level management. Some of the benefits that we've realized through implementing this process is we have automated reporting now. So on the front end, it took me about 3 or so months to build everything. And now it has a direct connection to metric stream. It's published out to Tableau server, and it just refreshes automatically. Other than any kind of periodic updates that we need to make for one reason or another, they're ready to go. So we're no longer having to spend all the time on report development that we were before. We spend less time on data analysis because we can just quickly see where our trends are and drill down to understand what the driver of some of those changes are. And our first line is no longer coming to us asking us to fill a request on an ad hoc basis. We're not having to drop everything to pull a report for them out of metric stream or something like that. They can just go straight into Tableau server, pull the report that they need, and they're good to go. And it's also really benefited our second and our third lines who are performing types of reviews and risk assessments within the company. So someone like audit, for example, might, if they're going to do an audit on a specific area of the business, then they might pull that dashboard to understand a little bit more about that organization's risk landscape so that they're better equipped and prepared to know what they really want to focus on during their review. So here is one example. I included two examples in this presentation. One is risk profile by operating unit. The other one is by risk category. Okay, so based on how we have our data structured within the libraries, there's a couple of ways that you can slice and dice. So let's look. So there's 4 graphics here, and I want to start at the top so you can understand kind of like what all is being shown here. This first graphic that goes across the top of the page, this is pulling from our risk module. So this is showing for a specific department, Department A, where we have assessed them in 8 risk categories. It's pulling what the highest score in that category was. So for example, let's say that risk category 1, let's say that this is fraud. And let's say within fraud, we assessed internal fraud and external fraud, and maybe some other categories as well. Whichever category underneath fraud had the highest inherent and residual score, that would pull. That's what would be coming through to the dashboard. Okay, so you can see like what their highest scores are for inherent and residual across each risk category. And then right below that is our issues by resolution status report, or I'm sorry, graphic. So we can see that for this specific division, they have 1 issue that we've said is yellow and behind schedule, and they have 4 that are green on target. 1 is in a clearance stage, which means internally we have one of our risk functions that needs to sign off that that issue has been closed before we feel comfortable marking it closed. And then we're capturing the number of issues that have been closed since year-end 2019. So just a high-level overview what this organization's issue landscape looks like. To the right of that chart, this is a breakdown of operational losses. So we classify our losses by risk category, and this kind of shows that this organization typically has a lot of this risk category 3, and you can see how that's kind of trending over time. And then down at the bottom, this is all the KRIs that this division tracks on a monthly basis, and you can see how those are trending over time. Before we move on to the next slide, all of these charts I mentioned they have interactive drill down capability. So anything on this chart, our business unit users are able to say, well, I want to know a little bit more about this one yellow open issue. What is that? They could click on that little yellow square, and it would bring them to, it would show them a hyperlink. They could click on that, and then it would show them a little bit more of the detail behind what that issue is. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But I just wanted to mention that for each one of these charts, that's kind of the power behind Tableau, is you can give them kind of like an overall risk view, but then further drill down where needed. Okay, so let's take a look now at risk profile by risk category. And these are the same charts, but because of the way that we've been able to structure our data within the GRC libraries, within Tableau, within metric stream, we're able to slice it in a slightly different way. So now instead of looking at a specific organization, we're looking at a specific risk type. So let's keep with the fraud example that I gave a second ago. Let's say that we're looking at our fraud risk category. Well, I can see in this chart to the right that this is how all of our divisions A through Q rated for their risk assessment scores. So you can see like Division K had 12 inherent and Division D had 12 inherent. So those look like the highest ones. Maybe I want to drill down into those to see what's driving it. That might not make as much sense for fraud, but maybe a risk category like process, you could really get into some insight if you were to drill down into like what specific processes are driving that high or moderate rating. And then we'll move on to the next chart, which is our issues by resolution status. I'm sorry, the next chart that was on the other, yep, right here. So open issues, we have 12 for the specific risk category, and that's across the company. I pretty much already talked about a lot of these charts, so I won't spend a lot of time, but basically it's the same thing. So loss trends by risk category. So if this were a fraud example, you could see what our fraud numbers looked like from September to February. If these were process-related losses, you could see how those were trending over time. If there was a specific, like if you saw a big spike, you might want to click on that bar and see what maybe the details were around the specific losses. And then any kind of metrics that we're tracking around fraud, for example, would be here at the bottom. And you could see that in December, we had a spike. I might want to click on that and see what it was exactly that occurred that month to cause the spike. So if we go to the next page, we'll actually see this drill down capability that I mentioned. So this is on the risk assessment chart. So for example, right here, Division A, risk category 3, if I want to see what is that risk category that's driving a 12 moderate rating, then I could just click on that and say view underlying data. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see what that underlying data looks like on the next slide. So we'll see that under risk category 3, it was risk 3.3 that was rated as impact significant likelihood 3, which gave us an inherent rating of 12 and residual risk of 10. And that is the risk rating that was pulled to the front. So these are examples of reports that we're producing that integrate all of our data onto a single dashboard. We also have other reports per solution area that I didn't include in the presentation, but you can see how you could use the same style of dashboard to produce like an issue report. So maybe you would want to include different charts around your issues. So you could do like an issue breakdown by organization or by risk or by status, and kind of get an overall view of your issue landscape that could easily be reproduced each quarter with just a click button. In summary, I just want to say that getting your data into the tool is only the beginning. By using a business intelligence tool like Tableau to create visualizations with your data that tell a story, you can really begin to build a mature 3 lines of defense with your risk officers who are empowered with the tools they've been given by your GRC program. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Shelby. That was a wonderful presentation. It showed everything that you're doing at Hancock Whitney and the value that you're getting out of the tool as well as Tableau. So well done. I just want to thank you and thank all our attendees. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to talking to you as we move through our GRC Summit. Take care now.